The Great Deception. Well, I'll tell you, it isn't Mormonism, it isn't Catholicism, it isn't hardline Calvinism. The Great Deception occurred quite a long time ago and has been ongoing. The truth got obscured probably as early as the late 2nd or 3rd century, and there were periods of where they were trying to come up with a suitable replacement that seemed like the truth with those early councils. But as they actually took control of things and got into basically almost complete control, that's when they stopped pretending, and that's where we have what is known as the Dark Ages, or the undeniable Dark Ages, where they locked up the Bible. The common man wasn't allowed to have them. If you didn't have their view, you weren't allowed to have the scriptures. They were so arrogant that they were saying, we'll tell you what the truth is, and no, you can't see it. Reminds me of Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi. That kind of backroom deal. But when they got in control, they stopped pretending. If anybody thinks the Spanish Inquisition was a good idea, well, you see, people back then weren't stupider than people today. They knew it wasn't a good idea back then. It's interesting, even the kings were caused to bow to the church. And there was always a struggle that went on with the church and kings. I'm sure you would recall stories of kings having to annul their marriages to please the church, or kings having trouble with the churches. And the church had a lot of power back then. And when they had that much power, they stopped pretending, because that's when they started doing what they wanted to do, openly. And that was not the Great Deception. But after the church started to lose control, because men came of the attitude, we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't, so we're gonna don't. And there was some genuinity, I would think, in the protest. It wasn't Catholics burning other fine Catholics of the same mindset on the stakes or putting them on the rack. They were putting people on the rack who disagreed with them. The original Protestants, they had nothing to lose. And there were those who wanted to mean well. But I would say that movement got taken over rather quickly. There was a change of tactics, and Satan isn't stupid. And so what they did was they had some Protestants who were not really Protestants, just sort of like these politicians are, as Republicans who aren't really Republicans. Elect us and we'll cure these problems that the Democrats cause, and you'll find out that they always have the perfect excuse of why they can't cure the problems. The Protestant movement by the common man, the street urchins and people like that, the guys with bakeries and whatever, that was taken over rather quickly by wolves pretending to be sheep. And here you had a false stage play where you have people equally opposed to the truth as the Catholics actually are. And so when it is necessary to come up with a different false doctrine, then they have to come up with another good cop, and eventually that good cop will be revealed to be the bad cop, and so then they have to come up with an answer to that one. And the last good cop here that we have, at least what people thought was a good cop, is now being revealed that he was an evil cop all along. The idea is to obscure, cover up, and black out the truth, whether it's by the Inquisition, by the Protestant movement that got taken over, whether it be the satisfaction, the honor theory, or the penal substitute. And so the penal substitute was the last good cop of the Great Deception. And it's now falling apart, seeing it for what it is, the bad cop. And the problem is, with Satan and these fellas, is they've run out of ideas. There's no such thing as a deception about nothing. So they're trying to come up with a replacement for the penal substitute, and they're failing. What they tend to do is to go out into what I call weekday afternoon emotional talk show type things. Now you see, God's a loving God, and so therefore he doesn't want to punish. at all. Instead of Christ was punished in your place, nah, he wasn't punished in your place. And guess what? You're not going to be punished either. So even so, the wrath of God still isn't there, or directed at those that it should be directed at. And that's why they're getting into what you see, the cross was a demonstration of how God really feels about sin or something. It wasn't really about him punishing sin, it was a display of how much he hated sin or something. So since he's made that statement, you to see of how he feels about sin, though he wasn't punishing it, then you should be, I don't know what, drawn to God over that act of empty symbolism, which of course is devoid of justice. They don't have a replacement for the penal substitute. Isn't it funny that we happen to come along at this time? There are those these days who see the problem with the penal substitute. What it is a point of law. And this is why they are screwed. Because people are rejecting the penal substitute over a point of law. Therefore, they are demanding a legal answer or legal resolution. But law is becoming the subject, or they're demanding an answer be questioned, a legal one, because the penal substitute violates the law. Whether it be Calvinism, Mormonism, whatever, the penal substitute, limited, unlimited atonement, it doesn't matter. They all portray God as unjust. And people are beginning to see that also, or connect the dots, that God is being portrayed as unlawful. And they see the problems in law with the penal substitute. And if that isn't liberal law, exactly what is? Empty symbolism? What's funny is it's not even really symbolism, really, per se, because it doesn't symbolize. If you were to go by the koine, for something to be symbolic of something else, you see, it has to paint an accurate picture of that which it's symbolizing. God punishing the innocent is not symbolizing him punishing you. Every deception about God that there is actually portraying God as though he were evil and mislabeling it and deceiving people into thinking that he's good when he's portrayed as evil. That's the trick. Here you have God portrayed as evil, and people are praising that, and they're actually praising evil, though they think they're praising good. That is the deception. And that has to be done in every deception about God. With the writing and the release of the principal legal standard, all of these tactics that they use, the portrayal of an unjust God, of an unlawful God, you see their tactics are busted with this book. And so they can't do it again after the release of this book. They cannot portray an unlawful God and then call him lawful. That's where they are out of luck and out of ideas. Also, with the release of this book, anybody who reads it can never be deceived again. Not even when the Antichrist shows up. With the Antichrist, he will be the exact opposite of Christ and try and take the place of Christ. Just like Satan in the rebellion, the exact opposite of God, while trying to take the place of God, while portraying God as the exact opposite of what he actually is. And so the Antichrist will use these same tactics, but he'll try to wow people by these pseudo signs, where it's basically angelic and demonic spirits and apparitions and various things like that, to give evidence supposedly beyond the natural. It is also fascinating, you see, that those who love evil, the idea of evidence beyond the natural, that's like their wildest dream come true of denying the truth. See, look, there's evidence beyond the natural. Who can do what he can do? No normal natural man. Though we would say God is with him. But not God is. So the Antichrist, he will deny Jesus Christ. He will deny the incarnation. He will deny that he was declared righteous, that the cross was a demonstration of his righteousness. He will deny all of those things. And so naturally the Antichrist, part of his message will not be the Savior is coming, because he takes the place of, he will say that he is the deliverer. And there will be wars and contentions and open warfare and cold wars, and he will pose himself as the solution to those things. Because he comes up out of Hades in a resurrection body, you know, he's the first fruits, by the way, of the evil dead. Just like Christ was the first fruits, he's the first fruits of the damned. And so he comes up out of Hades in a resurrection body. That's why you see him and the false prophet are cast into the lake of fire alive. He will make war against the saints. He will present them as the problem, which is, according to hypocrisy, right? You accuse the innocent of what you yourself are guilty of. So he will be like a psychological problem-solving device to all these evil people who want to live the unreal. Just like the atheists and secular humanists and all that stuff, and what will soon be coming, by the way, is all of the false religious people with false doctrines and false reports about God, with the Christian name tag on it, they will be accusing those with our doctrines, which are the actual truth, unmitigated, irrefutable truth. They will accuse us of being the problem when they are the actual problem, and the Antichrist will show up, and he will engage in the unreal, just like they doing. The false testimony is not real. And he will be like a psychological problem-solving device to them, to be used to avoid the condemned conscience. And so you see, the Antichrist will act like the satanic depiction of God. He will punish the innocent, claiming that they are guilty, when he's actually guilty of what he seeks to punish them for. And so that's why you see he and all of his followers deserve death. That's exactly why they try to give the innocent, with the true testimony, death. He will portray himself as being the winner, and Satan too. And he will not deny the existence of God, by the way, the true God. He will not deny his existence. He will blaspheme him. And so will his followers. They're aware of God. They will be aware of God. Guess what? They're aware of God today. The atheist is aware of God. That's what's bugging the crap out of him. That's what causes him to get on the internet and whatever on a Saturday night rather than being out fornicating with the rest of the people that are going to hell. It's about appeasing one's conscience with the unreal. To suppress the truth, they suppress it with the unreal to make themselves feel better. It's like the criminal. You don't like the idea of going to jail. I mean, it's interesting. It's like the outlaw biker. They put so much importance on the crappy two-wheelers they're driving around, to where if you put a scratch on them, even by accident, you gotta die. And so it's about self-justification where there is none, and it's about appeasing one's conscience. And so you see, when a street gang has decided when they get disrespected they have to kill you, you see, they have created a system, a false system of pseudo-logic, or a false standard, by which they may feel justified in acting like animals and killing you. Now you see how the righteous man, even if you were to accidentally offend him, or if you did on purpose say something derogatory about him, you see, he's not supposed to kill you or even strike you. All of that they do in the tribulation period, just like they do it now, is for the false sense of justification for operating like animals, brute force, and suppressing the truth so that they'll feel better. And the Antichrist will come, and he will be like their wildest dream come true. And he will be an evil man. He will accuse God of all the evil he's guilty of. He will accuse the saints of all the evil he is guilty of. And he will accuse the saints of all the evil his followers are guilty of, while at the same time portraying his followers and himself as justified. That's exactly what he'll do, because he will come up out of hell in a resurrection body as the first fruits of the damned, him and the false prophet. He will be unstoppable in war, because you cannot kill him. I don't care what you do, you can't kill him. And so he'll overcome the saints in war. And that's why it takes an act of God and this is used, by the way, for the testing of the saints, where you have the Antichrist and his legions. They're used to test the saints. The question is, how much do you love the truth? Do you love it above your own life? It's interesting, like Christ, when he was put to death by men and murdered by men, it was done in a state of ignorance. But in the tribulation period, you see, and soon, and even before the tribulation starts, by the way, just like it was in the early church in the 1st and 2nd century, people were being put to death. The killers were not in a state of ignorance as to what the truth was. And so in the tribulation period, they will be given death because of their true testimony and because they know it's true. and that's what bugs them. But what happens though is they actually get their wildest dream come true. God permits them and just lets them go, and they actually believe the unbelievable and become completely psychotic, and they'll actually believe they were justified when before they knew they weren't. They're unreal. They actually wind up believing it. And they'll believe that they shall not go to the lake prison. They'll believe that they have won. And God permits this, lets it occur to show what they would act like in eternity. You see, if you believe you will not go to the lake prison, you'll be out somewhere. And if you believe that you've won and you're justified, then you have no fear of the wrath of God. You have no fear of judgment or anything. And so in the tribulation period, with the Antichrist and his followers, they actually believe the unbelievable. Believe they won, they're going to get away with it. They actually believe they're justified when they kill you. And they're in a totally psychotic state. And this is to show what they would be like in eternity. And where they actually believe that they shall not be held accountable for any of their deeds. So what you have is unbridled, there's no deterrency. Unbridled acts of evil. And there will be no limit to their arrogance. And to eliminate the idea of a conflict of interest, that they were just following the Antichrist to save their own lives, coupled with them actually believing that he's won, and that they've won, and God has been proven to be less than righteous, then what happens is God pours out the judgments on them, and they are afflicted, and they're in absolute total misery, to show that they didn't do it for pleasure, to show they didn't do it for position in this life, jobs, power, whatever, to show that they aren't doing it because they were afraid of the Antichrist, or they did it to save their own lives. What's interesting, it mirrors, just like Job, to where they seek death and they don't even want to live here anymore. It's like a mirror opposite of Job, or Daniel, or any other saint who passed the test, being without conflict of interest, where they either gave up their life or were willing to. Well, it was proven that they did not value their own lives above the truth. These people, it'll be proven that they were without a conflict of interest or intimidation, that they were not doing evil to save their own lives. When they seek death and they cannot find it, it is proof they didn't follow the Antichrist to save their own lives, and that they didn't afflict the righteous to save their own lives.